Welcome to the Compliance Officers Playbook podcast.
It's great to be back.
Today feels, well, it feels significant, doesn't it? We're recording this on Monday, January 26th, 2026. And if you're listening to this and you happen to work in a bank or a fintech, maybe a crypto exchange, that date is probably ringing a very loud bell. We are, nearly a month into the new world?
The new reality. The post-transition reality, as some are calling it.
Exactly. The EBA guidelines on restrictive measures, we're talking about EBA GL 2414 and its sibling, 15, they officially applied as of December 30th, 2025.
That's right. The grace period is over.
The training wheels are off, the sandbox is closed. And looking at this stack of documentation we have in front of us, this isn't just a minor tweak to the rulebook, is it?
No, absolutely not. I mean, I try to avoid hyperbole, but this is a genuine paradigm shift. And I don't use that phrase lightly.
It feels like one.
If you look at the history of EU sanctions, for a long, long time, it was very much a directive-based approach. Member states had a lot of leeway, a lot of discretion. But what we're seeing here is the European Banking Authority planting a flag and saying, enough.
So before we dive into the really deep weeds of governance and fuzzy matching, and believe me, we are going deep. Let's talk about that enough. Why now? What was the catalyst for the EBA to drop two massive, frankly transformative guidelines that basically rewrite the compliance operating system for sanctions?
Well, it all goes back to a realization in Brussels around 2021. The European Commission took let's say, a very hard look at the data.
Okay.
Specifically, they were looking at how sanctions or restrictive measures, to use the official term, were being applied across the entire bloc. And the findings were, well, I'd call them polite but damning.
Polite but damning. That does sound like the EU's specialty.
It is, isn't it? They essentially found that implementation was, to put it mildly, not as uniform across the EU as it ought to be. In other words, it was a total mess.
A patchwork quilt of enforcement.
A very patchy one. You had a bank in member state A that was screening every single transaction in real time with fuzzy matching calibrated to, say, 90%. Super strict.
Right.
Then you go to a bank in member state B, and they were maybe doing batch screening once a week. Or their systems couldn't even read non-Latin characters properly. This created regulatory arbitrage.
It's a sieve with different-sized holes.
Precisely. And if you're a bad actor, an oligarch, a terrorist financier, someone trying to proliferate weapons, you don't run at the brick wall. You look for the biggest, easiest hole in the sieve.
And you find it.
You find it. And this divergence, this inconsistency, wasn't just a legal risk for the banks. It was actively undermining the entire foreign policy and security objectives of the European Union.
So this is bigger than just avoiding a fine.
So much bigger. These guidelines are the patch. They're the great harmonization project that says, here is the new minimum standard for everyone. And by the way, it's probably much, much higher than what you've been doing.
It's interesting you frame it in terms of foreign policy, because for so many years, compliance, especially sanctions compliance, has felt like this administrative box-ticking exercise to keep the auditors happy.
It did.
But this reframes the whole profession. It positions the compliance officer as a sort of guardian of geopolitical strategy.
That is exactly the tone of the text. It's a deliberate shift in the narrative. It's moving away from this is an administrative burden and towards this is a security imperative.
Yeah.
And your role is critical to that.
So with that in mind, we've got a bit of a roadmap for this conversation because, as we said, this documentation it's dense.
It is.
First, we are going to dissect the new governance mandates. Because, spoiler alert, sanctions are not just a back office problem anymore, not by a long shot.
The board needs to be paying attention.
Definitely. Then we're going to look at what I think is the new heart of the compliance program, this thing called the Restrictive Measures Exposure Assessment.
That is a critical piece of the puzzle. Absolutely fundamental.
Huge. Then after that, we'll get into the operational nitty-gritty. We'll look at the specifics for payment service providers, your PSPs, and the crypto asset service providers, the CASPs. We're talking screening engines, calibration, all the technical stuff.
The nuts and bolts.
Nuts and bolts. And finally, we'll wrap up with the real detective work, how you actually detect circumvention, the cat and mouse game.
It's a comprehensive agenda. There's a lot to cover.
There is. So let's start at the top, the foundation. We're looking at Guideline 14 here for our listeners. And for me, the single biggest takeaway from reading this section was the tone shift, the shift in who is ultimately responsible. It feels like they are dragging sanctions compliance out of the server room and into the boardroom.
That's precisely what's happening. And we need to be very, very clear on this point right from the start. Guideline 14 applies to all financial institutions under the EBA's remit.
So not just the big global banks.
Not at all. If you're a credit institution, a payment institution, an e-money institution, a CASP, this is for you. The days of treating sanctions screening as this check-the-box exercise that, the IT department handles with some bit of software are completely over.
It's not an IT problem.
It's a governance problem. The guidelines place the responsibility squarely, and I mean squarely, on the shoulders of the management body.
And when you say management body, just to be crystal clear, we're talking about the board of directors, right?
Yes, the board of directors are the equivalent supervisory function. The text is incredibly explicit on this. It says the management body is responsible for approving the institution's strategy for restrictive measures and for overseeing its implementation.
Okay, so they can't just delegate it away and wash their hands of it. They can't just say, oh, I didn't know our screening engine was 5 years out of date.
That defense is gone. Plausible deniability is effectively dead. The text literally says that all members of the management body must be aware of the institution's exposure to restrictive measures.
That's a strong word.
It is. It means they need to understand the vulnerability. They need to have a grasp of the risks the institution is running.
That seems like a really tall order, though. I mean, you have board members who might be experts in credit risk or marketing or capital markets. Are they really expected to understand the nuances of fuzzy matching algorithms or sanctions list management?
It's a fair question. And no, they don't need to know how to code the screening engine, but they absolutely need to understand the institution's risk appetite.
So high-level questions.
High-level but critical questions. They need to be able to ask and understand the answers to, are we doing business in high-risk corridors? Why? And is our system actually capable of stopping a payment to a designated person? Can you prove it to me? They cannot claim ignorance anymore.
And crucially, the part that really makes this real, they're on the hook for resource allocation.
Ah, yes. The budget conversation. This is where the rubber truly meets the road.
It always is.
The guidelines state, and this is almost a direct quote, that the management body must ensure the compliance function has adequate human and technical resources to do its job.
Which is a direct countermeasure against what I call the starving the beast strategy.
You should explain that.
Starving the beast. That's where a board says they want top-tier compliance, zero tolerance for error, but then they refuse to pay for the modern software or the headcount to actually achieve it.
Precisely. We've all seen it. The CCO goes into the budget meeting and says, look, our legacy system is producing 95% false positives. My team is drowning. We need to upgrade. And the board says, no, it's too expensive. Just, work harder. Be more efficient.
Right.
Now, under these guidelines, if that system fails, if a payment gets through because it was understaffed or the tech was outdated, the board owns that failure personally.
That is an incredibly powerful tool for every chief compliance officer listening to us right now.
It is.
You can walk into that budget meeting, slide EBGL 2024-14 across the table, and say, this is not my opinion. If you're loving this conversation and want to be part of keeping it going, the best way to support the show is to become a paid subscriber on Apple Podcasts. You'll get access to the full episode, plus every deep dive we do. Head to Apple Podcasts, search Compliance Officers Playbook, and join our growing community today. Invite listeners who love this show to become a paid subscriber today for $5 USD, and get full access to all premium episodes packed with insights, stories, and value they won't find anywhere else. Thank you for joining us on The Deep Dive.